Last week I was in mourning. Last week I was not here. So it's good to be back. Morning Mavis, hello. Good, yeah. Good morning, and my name is Rumbi Vunzawabaya. For those who are coming on here for the first time, I'm a solicitor and I practice in immigration law. I run a community interest company which is called Tulia, and Tulia means to settle. So what we do is we help migrants to settle in the UK. We help migrants with advice and representation. So we do, we give immigration advice, but we also help holistically. So we help people with food. If they need food, we help people with food. We help, like now the new terms are starting. So we signpost people to charities that help with school uniforms. If you're struggling with school uniforms, we help people with school uniforms. If people are struggling even with accommodation and a place to sleep, we provide temporary accommodation, and we are working on a new project that we're going to release very soon, which is called Solace. So we've been using other people's accommodation to help and provide accommodation for people who are struggling, but now we're just establishing our own. So we're going to be working with you guys and working with other people to try and make that happen for people who are struggling with accommodation. So many migrants with different backgrounds, different challenges, not only new arrivals, but even people who've been here for a long time. So we support people with even just to listen, even listening support for people who need help, people who are victims of domestic violence. We support a lot of those. We have many victims of domestic violence who we support. And I'll be talking a little bit about that because I think that is probably 60% of the work that we do is working with victims of domestic violence. And we've been doing that for years and years and years. And it's a dangerous area because it comes with risk. Sometimes you can find yourself being the victim as well. So we, yeah, we have a lot of interesting work in that area. I once had to call the police when somebody came with a gun wanting to shoot me. And I remember my husband was there that day and he was protecting me because I was saying, shoot me, kill me, do you want to kill me? Because I think I was just trying to fight. So we do so much work with so many different people. And we are based in Coventry. So every Friday, most Fridays anyway, not every single Friday, but most Fridays we're here answering your questions, dealing with common themes and common issues that people present to us. So today, I've got some questions that I'm going to answer. If you want to see some of our old lives, if you've got questions, we have them on our YouTube channel, which is Tulia. And you'll find the link in the chat. If you can subscribe, you have access to all of our old lives that we've done here. Some of the YouTube podcasts that were done by Fahana, you'll be able to access them on our YouTube channel. Also on our website, which is www.tulia.org.uk. You can find a lot of information on there that will answer most questions. But every Friday, we're here live on Facebook with an opportunity for people to ask questions and to answer some of the common questions that we have. We've got loads of questions, so I'm going to go right into them and answer some of the questions that we've had. We group them into into themes. So we don't read out your particular question, because I know some people are saying, don't read out mine. That's fine. We have themes. So you will see that, like this question, we've had about 10 or 15 questions similar to this, but it's one where what happens when you come to the UK. I think most of our work has increased by, we were just doing our statistics last week, and it's like, I think about 400% we've had an increase in work from, and most of those people are new arrivals. So they're carers who have come into the country over the last year or 18 months. So that is the majority of the increase in the work that we have. So many of the questions you'll see are catering towards that particular group. So what happens when you come into the country and there's no hours and you fail to get a switch? What are the repercussions? So what are the repercussions for someone who has come here to work and the employer doesn't have work for them and they have to leave because they're unable to support themselves and they can't get another employer, or the employer loses their license and they're unable to operate. So if the license for the sponsor is revoked, or you are fired and you're unable to get another job. So what happens when you are unable to switch and to secure your visa? So I often talk about how important it is to protect your visa status, because part of the work that we do is with people who are overstayers, people who are overstayers, people who are here illegally because they've lost their visa status. So there's been massive recruitment of healthcare workers, and some people are going to end up not being able to get a switch for whatever reason. So there's different reasons. It may be that the employer, their company goes bust, or they lose their license, or you're fired, or whatever happens. So that is one question as to what happens. So if you are finding yourself in a position where you don't have an employer and you are on a skilled worker visa, what do you do? So number one, choice that you have, because we always have choices in life. We always have choices. So the first choice will be to return to your country of origin. So to return to your country of origin helps you to protect your immigration status, your history. You don't become an illegal immigrant. You don't become a victim of the hostile immigration system. So there is a hostile immigration system here. There is, it's very difficult to live without the right to work. It's very difficult to live here without permission to rent property, permission to work, access to the NHS. So when you find that you no longer have a right to remain or a right to work, or that right is coming up to an end, the first choice is to return. And that is always an option that is given when you come for advice from me or any other solicitor, is can you go back to your country so that you don't breach your immigration status? And you then regroup from home, either from your home, wherever your home is, and you either come back on another visa or another employer, or you just find a way or you go back and you try and hustle or do whatever it is that you want to do, or go back to another country. So that's option number one. But most people don't like to hear that. Most people will say, no, I didn't come here to go back. I don't want to go back. So what I would say is then, okay, let's look at what other options are available. You know, sometimes I have people texting me and saying, what do I do? It's not an easy thing that I can text you back and say, do this or do that. It all depends on your circumstances. And that's why it's so important to get advice, because you may already have other options. You might have other options. You know, we look at if you've got children, if you've got a child who is British, so you may have a child who is British. And so what I mean by a child who is a British citizen is not a child who was just born here, but a child who was born in the UK and one of the parents had indefinite leave to remain, or one of the parents was a British citizen, or one of the parents, if one of the parents was had indefinite leave to remain or a British citizen. So you might be in a situation where the father of your child has got indefinite leave to remain, or the mother of your child has got indefinite leave to remain, and your child is British, or any other way that your child is British, but not just because they were born here. So there has to be an entitlement to the citizenship from another route. So if you have a child who is a British citizen, then you can apply as a parent of a child. So you can switch from being a skilled worker to being a parent of a child who is settled or who has got British citizenship. So you can do that. If you meet someone online and you are dating someone and you're in a relationship with someone and you're in love with them, and they have status in this country. So they could be somebody with indefinite leave. It could be somebody who is also on a skilled worker. It could be someone who is a British citizen, a refugee, somebody who is in another visa category. So if you meet someone, you can get married to them and you can switch from a skilled worker to a spouse visa. So that is an option that you can do. You can switch on to being a dependent as well. So there's different ways that you can do. If, for example, even if your spouse has come with you, you're in the care sector, there's no hours, your sponsor loses their license, but your husband works in construction, or your wife is an accountant or a teacher or something else, or a social worker, they can then become the one who is on the skilled worker visa, and they reka you. You then go and become their dependent. So if there are two of you, there is options as well that you can swap around. And you can be looking for jobs which are more secure, which are more stable. So there's jobs in construction, there's jobs for butchers, there's jobs, a lot of sectors, teachers, engineers, accountants, in healthcare, there's so many vacancies. So if one of you came as a carer and the other one is in another sector, you can then swap that way. So that can help you to then regularize, and you switch from being the principal sponsor to being the dependent. So you can swap around in that way. So what have I said? Just to recap, if you find yourself in a position, so the question that I'm answering today is, if you find yourself in a position where your company, your employer does not have hours, you fail to get a switch, what are the repercussions? So if you fail to get another employer, or if your employer loses their license and you fail to get another employer, number one is if you let your visa lapse, then you become a person who is deemed an illegal immigrant. And so you lose the right to work, the right to live here, the right to rent property, the right to access NHS treatment. You can get emergency treatment, but secondary treatment you have to pay. So you then are in a position where you are not supposed to be here. So number one, I had said you can go back to your country of origin. That's always an option, right? Number two, you can switch to a dependent, to a person who is on another visa. You can also switch to be a student if you have the resources. You can apply for a student. You can for a place as a student, and you can become a student. You can switch to be the spouse of somebody who has got leave to remain. With the student visa, switching to being a dependent of a student visa, you would need to check, because the rules are currently, they changed in that area. So I would need to check for you. I don't want to answer that and tell you the wrong thing. So you can switch to being the spouse of a person who has got indefinite leave to remain, British citizen. If you meet somebody on Bumble, on Hinge, on all the different websites that are there, Fish, plenty of Fish. I have a lot of single friends. So if you meet someone there, then you can go on to a spouse visa for a person who has got indefinite leave, British citizenship, refugee status, or a skilled worker. Or you can swap around so that your partner or your spouse, they can go onto a visa. If you are a person who's in a same-sex relationship, so if you are a person who is in a relationship with another woman or another man, in the UK, you can have a civil marriage, so you can actually get married to a person if you're in a same-sex relationship, and you can switch on to their visa as well. Then so those are two options. Another option, if you have a fear of going back to your country of origin. So say you're here and you're scared to say, I can't go back because I fear for my life. I'm scared that if I go back, I may be arrested, or I may be persecuted, or I might not be able. So for example, last week, I was really happy. I did a case for somebody who was unable to go back to their country of origin because if that person was gay, and they were not able to be openly gay, and they'd been persecuted before, and it's a criminal offense. So they went for their interview on I think it was a Wednesday, and like at 9 a.m. on the Thursday, they got their 5 years refugee status. So that was good. It was nice. So if you can get, if you have a fear of going back and you have a credible, genuine asylum case, then you can always claim asylum. There's no one to stop you from doing that. So that is also an option if you have a reason why you cannot go back to your country. So even if there's war in your country, if people are being killed, people are being shot, if war breaks out, so a genuine and a credible asylum case, you can always claim asylum. You can say to the authorities, I can't go back to my country in Wakanda because I'm afraid. Because if I go back, they will kill me. For whatever reason it is that you are fearful. So it has to be a convention reason. So it has to be a reason where you're afraid because you are persecuted as a member of like an opposition party, if it's politics, if it's because of your sexuality, so if you're gay, if it's because of your religion, if it's because of your gender. So there's different categories where you can claim asylum. So it depends on, if your country is safe and nothing happens there, then of course your asylum case will be refused and you will be removed. But that is, that's an option. So there's many options, and that's why it's important for you, for yourself, to get advice. So when we say to someone who asks a question like that, we say it's better to get legal advice because every single case is different. Each case is different, and you can get advice that is specific to you, to your circumstances. And I know people will say, Google, do this. That's fine. You know, there's so much information that is available. But where you go to someone who's regulated, so we are regulated. I'm regulated by two bodies. I'm regulated as an individual by the Solicitors Regulation Authority. So I am accountable to them, and I'm not allowed to actually practice if I am not registered, or I'm not allowed. It would be a criminal offense. I would go to prison for giving immigration advice if I'm not regulated to do that. So you are regulated by, I'm also, our organization, Tulia, is regulated by the OISC. So we have double registration. I'm regulated as an individual. Our organization is regulated as an organization. So where you need advice, check to see. It's easy to get that information. Just put someone's name and check, or phone and find out, is this person regulated? So that you can know that you're getting advice from somebody where they are accountable to another body, so that you don't get advice from someone who is not regulated to give you advice. Because if you get wrong advice, you've got no one to sue. We have insurance. We have to have insurance. So that insurance covers us if we're negligent. And that happens sometimes. You may give wrong advice. That's why I don't like to answer questions here, which I'm not 100% sure. Because if I give you wrong advice, you then say she gave us wrong advice. So we are regulated. So get advice when you have a question from somebody who is regulated and somebody who is accountable, so that you know that you're getting the correct advice. It's important for you to do that. So whatever situation you're facing, if you are at risk and you're worried, get advice. Pay for it if you can afford to pay for it. If you cannot afford to pay for it, there's many organizations who can help you. We can, but I know our waiting list for free advice is backed up to October. And that's the same with many organizations, that the free advice that they have waiting lists because of resources. So we have double. We have some people who pay, and then we have some people that who would fall for free initial advice, or free representation depending on their circumstances. But then we also have other people who pay, so that our organization can be sustainable, because we can't just rely on grants or funding and things like that. We need to be sustainable as an organization. So that's why we have a 2-tier system. There is free advice, but when you're getting free advice, you wait. You know, there's a price to pay, and that price is you have to wait and go in a queue. And so, but there is free advice available for everyone all over. There's other organizations who are much bigger than us, who have more resources, more personnel. You can look and say free immigration advice. You can get it if you need it. But get advice. Don't rely on WhatsApp groups. Don't rely on my friend said. Don't rely on that, because that is not reliable. You might actually be sitting on your breakthrough. You might be sitting on an answer, which I might know, but maybe somebody else who you're asking on your WhatsApp group doesn't know, because they've got a different experience. You might have met someone who came and met you in Zim, and you had a child together, and that child is actually entitled to British citizenship, but you didn't know. So, you know, there's so many different scenarios, and you need to be able to get advice. So if you are at risk, then definitely it's good to get advice, but I've given rough options. So if you're joining on now, you can watch this on replay and just go through the different options that I gave for someone who is at risk of losing their visa status. Edna said, I need advice regarding an application for citizenship. I'll send a link on there so that you can book an appointment for that, so that we can go through your history, probably do a subject access request, and see if there's any barriers to you getting citizenship. If there's no barriers, then you can it's a process that you can probably do yourself. But if you can't, we can then do that for you. Lucy says, what about if you manage to get a switch in that time scale? Are you not allowed to stay? Oh, yes, you are. That's number one. So get a switch. Get a switch. That's the first answer. Get a switch. But now, I just want to touch on something else about getting a switch, and something that we're starting to see. So, people give each other advice, and people listen to so much advice. Everyone becomes an expert, and they tell people, if your employer doesn't have hours, just go and work somewhere else. So before the 27th of August, people could go and work for in secondary employment for more hours. But from the 27th, it's back to 20 hours. So what some people were doing was they were working full-time for somebody else who's not their sponsor. So they were doing like 40 hours, whatever, because they were just going to get money. They needed to survive, so they went to work for another person. So perhaps now they get a switch. When they're applying for switches, what we're starting to see is that the Home Office is checking, and there's all the income so far has been from either an agency or from another employer, but there's been no income registered with their principal employer. So it looks like for the first 6 months, you haven't actually worked. You've been here, but you've worked illegally, because the extra hours are supplementary. So that shouldn't be your primary employment. It should be supplementary. So it sounds simple, right? But it's not simple when your current employer has got no hours and you want to survive. So if someone is going to give you 40 hours, you're just going to work there. And so now when some people are now finding a switch and they're switching, they're having difficulties because the Home Office is saying you were working illegally. You were working illegally. So you are not, because you were working full time, not supplementary, but your primary work was with somebody who's not your sponsor. So then they cancel your visa, they refuse your leave to remain and ask you to go back. So that makes it difficult for you to switch when you've breached the conditions of your leave to remain. So when you are someone who's sponsored, you're supposed to work for the person who sponsored you. If they don't have hours, it's best to switch early, straight away, and switch and go somewhere else. But if you're working 100 hours somewhere else, it will come back to you because you are in breach of your visa conditions. So it's important to survive. It's not easy. I'm not saying this as if, it's just easy for you to sit at home and look for a switch. I know how difficult it is. And I have my own opinion on how the Home Office implemented this whole scheme. I have my own thoughts on what they did wrong and how they put people in a position where they're so vulnerable. But those same people, they now come down very hard on them if they breach their conditions. And that's not fair. And some employers, they over-recruited. The system was open to abuse. People were brought in when there was no job. So there's so many different facets to this. But what I'm saying is the impact for you is if you haven't worked for your employer and you've only worked supplementary employment, that has put your visa at risk. So even when you're trying to switch, it can become a problem. Please stop calling me. Somebody keeps ringing me and I keep saying I'm unavailable because I'm live. I am unavailable. Please stop ringing me. Right. So there people have to be careful. So Lucy, what you're saying is, yes, if you find a switch in that time, perfect. But sometimes people have found switches and there's a delay in getting a decision. They're worried about that. It could be that they're making checks. The Home Office say we're making checks with other government organizations. So they do checks with the HMRC. They do checks to see that were you actually working for your employer and what was happening. But if you were working for somebody else, then it can cause problems. So we've seen that happening where you've breached your condition. So now that the hours have gone back to 20, please make sure that you stick to that. For supplementary employment, stick to it. Sometimes I see people giving advice and helping each other on these groups. And people get slated for it. You know, people were saying, we know that it's nothing new. But it's because we see the impact when things go wrong, and when people don't follow the rules, or when they listen to word on the street, or they listen to what they're hearing, it can go terribly wrong. So some people's visas are getting cancelled, or even their switches are being refused. So that is a problem. If the sponsor didn't have hours at all, Lucy, Kotokwa, try your best to look for another employer. Honestly, just look for a switch. Apply. Do what you need to do to apply. And don't be lazy, because some people say we're applying, but they're not. Like, send out hundreds. Just keep applying and try. Everywhere. Don't be fussy. I want to be in this part of the country. You're not tied to a place. Look anywhere, everywhere. Just search and make sure that you apply. Just everywhere. Scotland, Wales, Ireland, anywhere. Just apply as many jobs. And that's where the perseverance and the tenacity comes in. So even if you get knocked back, you keep going. You phone, you apply. Invest your time in that than investing your time in picking up a lot of extra shifts and not having the time to apply, because you are the one who's going to suffer when you are being asked to go back. So it's important to secure your status and to stay in the right position and stay in your position where you have a visa. We work with people who have been here 20 years. No visa. They lost their visa. Just one thing and you lose it. So it's important to stay in the right place. So apply. Look for switches. If your sponsor has not got hours, please, as much as you have a right to report, you have a right to do this, yes, you can. And that's fine. You know, it's up to you if that's what you want to do. But invest your time in getting another job, because that is the most important thing. Invest your time in securing your own immigration status. Make sure that you have found a switch. Make sure that you found another job so that you can secure your immigration status. That is important. Of course, then there's other things where it's enforcement and stuff like that. It's another issue. So I'm just going to run through the comments. Hello, Mufaro. Thank you for all the information that you share so much with people and try and help people. It's really, really good. I was commenting on what you said. It will be difficult to switch to a new employer, will be refused. If you've breached your if they've got no hours at all, it's you know, yeah, it's when you say, so okay. So you said, what if your employer's got no hours and you work somewhere else, right? So the thing is, how can I put this? Two wrongs don't make a right. So they've brought you in and they don't have hours, right? Yeah. So if you've got, I know the sponsors won't like me for this, but you have got a remedy, right? Because you have signed a contract with someone. You have a contract to say, I am coming here to work for you, and you're going to pay me this much. You're giving me 39 hours a week, right? And so we have a contractual obligation. And if you breach a contract, so there's breach of contract, I can sue you for my unpaid wages, right? I can say, I need to recover the money that you were supposed to pay me. So when you go to Unison, when you go to organizations, ACAS, they will help you to get the money that you're owed. So for all of those hours, weeks that you were sitting at home and you're supposed to be working, the principal person is your sponsor. They're the ones who are supposed to pay you because they are the ones who have a contract with you. So they've got a contractual obligation to you. You have said, I avail myself for work. I've left my country, sold my house. I've come. I'm here. They say, Atinama hours, that we don't have hours for you. You say, but we've got this contract. Our contract is on the COS. You said to the Home Office that you've got hours for me. My contract is with you. I've got an employment contract with you, which is valid, which we have signed. So it's important that piece of paper, that contract, is a binding document. So they owe you. They owe you. They owe you your unpaid wages. However, if you're one of those people who said, who would have said, I don't care, all I want to do is to cross. So I'm not going to talk much about that. But you entered into something that you knew was not genuine. So even if you did that knowing that, you are then also partially liable, yeah? So it's so I won't go into those people. I'm just going to talk about those people who genuinely came and there's a job, there's a contractual obligation. So that is your primary place of remedy, rather than going and trying to fix it yourself and working. But the problem is you're victimized. So it's not even easy, right? You say to them, I'm suing you because you're supposed to be paying me. So I want my pay. I want my job. Right? And then you start going to and fro with them. Then they will say, okay, fine, we'll give you your money, but you're going. You know, they'll find a way. They'll tell you we're making you redundant because we don't have hours, so we're terminating. Then you've got 60 days to get your visa. So you have those rights, but in everything you need wisdom, isn't it? Wisdom is the principal thing. So of course you can assert your rights. Of course you can. You can. But you have to also look at what you, is it for you now to pursue that, or is it better for you to invest your time in applying for a switch? So there's wisdom, there's rights that we all have, but kuna wisdom. Wisdom is the principal thing. So I'm not saying allow people to get off with it. No, it's not right. You have a right. You have a right. But sometimes you will have a person who, like for me, when I get a person who comes to me and asks me for advice, what I want for you is the very best outcome. So I want you to stay in this country. Our organization is called Tulia. We help migrants to settle. I understand that you are in a difficult position, right? But we have to prioritize, okay, what is our where are we going? So we can go in hard and fight the sponsor, or we can go in hard and get a switch. Once we are secure and we've got a switch, then maybe we can think about other things. But we know what we know. And I think, like Lady Vimbai, you said something which is very important, that people put themselves in these situations. People put themselves in a situation and then they come and they go hard on other people. People put themselves, COSs are not for sale. It's not a commodity that you are buying. You're supposed to be coming here for a job. So when you buy a COS without hours, you are putting yourself in that position, right? You know, you are saying, I don't care. But when you come here and then that's why I'm saying there's people in different categories, right? So the people who have put themselves in a position, it's difficult, isn't it? So modern day slavery, there's labor abuse. So Barbara, you've asked, is this not modern day slavery? So where there's labor abuse, where people are going to work, they're not being paid, they're not being paid, they're working, and they are, there's modern day slavery, right? They're not being paid. Then there's people who are not going to work, they're not being paid. That is different crimes. Now, there's fraud, because you've brought people when you don't have work for them. It could be fraud. It could be a simple employment issue that you brought people, but you lost contracts. So if you don't have hours, that's not modern day slavery. Not having hours is not modern day slavery. Because if you don't have hours and you genuinely thought you could have had contracts, palliative care, people die, you no longer have hours. Or you thought you were going to get, you had contracts, you had secured them, then you have a CQC inspection, you fail, you lose some of your contract. You have a safeguarding issue, you lose. So many things can happen in business. So it's not everything is modern day slavery, and we like to throw around, yeah, it's modern day. No, it could be that genuinely you had the hours and then something happened. So as an employer, you then have to make a business decision and say, okay, my business decision is I have to let some people go because I cannot afford to keep to your contract. Right? So you, as an employer, you also have to make tough decisions and say, I can no longer afford to keep the people that I've recruited. I'm sorry. And that's why the COS should not be something that is sold, because if you've offered a person a job, they've got the job, you no longer have the work, it's easy to let them go. But things are messed up and complicated because factors can go wanda, you know, a lot of factors. But in a situation where you're just an employer, you've taken on people, things happen in business. You have to let them go. That's it. You know, you have to say to them, I no longer have the hours. Kushaya my hours. I see Mosha. So to not have hours is not a crime. But to bring someone with the knowledge that you don't have any work and you bring them and you bring them in, that is that could be, it's a breach of sponsor duties. It could be a criminal offense. There's so many things that it could be. And there are people, I know we said this, but the next year we'll see, you know how it works here, that people get arrested, people get charged, and then most of 12 months later, just a newspaper. So we will start to see these things coming in, out, probably next year. Because things here, you know, the wheels of justice, they grind steadily but quietly. So we'll start to see next year. But so there's so many different scenarios. So there's where somebody just genuinely, things went wrong in their business, they have to let people go. They go through the process, but once they give them references, people go. It happens, right? So getting a sponsor doesn't mean you've secured a job for 5 years. No. Getting a sponsor means you have secured entry and you've got a job for now. But that job can end any time because of how business is fluid. So there's a difference. Then there's modern day slavery. Then there's labor abuse. Then there's human trafficking. So maybe I'll have to do a live on defining what things are, because we love to say, everything, that's modern day slavery. And it might not be. It might be just genuine. That's munanama hours. So if they don't have hours, they don't have hours. What can you do? But where you have sold something that's not for sale, and then somebody comes in and, you know, there's nothing. Or where you've brought people into the country and you just never even had a contract. And then it's a breach of contract. But even as you sue them, if all of the people sue them, you know, you can get a decision on paper, you can get them, you know, you'll get the money, maybe, if they have it. If they don't, they'll just declare themselves bankrupt. You've won a victory. But then what about you? So then it becomes a problem. They're not getting away with murder, you know, Barbara. They're not getting away with murder. These things catch up with you. So it may seem like people are getting away with murder, but they're not. And if there's a breach of contract, there is a remedy. Thank God we live in a country where there's the rule of law. Because where there is a breach of contract, there is a remedy. But as migrants, you've got to think on different fronts, and you have to also be strategic about what you're doing. And there's people who are not innocent because they would have come knowing what they're coming for, why they're doing what they're doing. And so it then becomes it's very complicated, this issue. It's messy. And it's just a mess in terms of some of the way that the system has been taken advantage of, because criminals are always there. Barbara, there's people who vangori matsotsi. There's people who are matsotsi manyama. They are real criminals. So they take advantage. They see an opportunity, they take advantage of it. And so it's very difficult. But those people, some will get away with it, but not all. And things, they do come back to haunt you. And that's why you will see that people's licenses are getting revoked. You will see that people are even being arrested. So you might think people are getting away with murder because you can't see the impact. But the impact is there. And, the government will catch up and they will put structures in place. Even this whole, the visa for carers is being reviewed again, I think in October. So if they see that something is open to abuse, I don't go far. And they re-strategize, regroup, think how else to do it. And then they might come back and bring about a different requirements. They make it stricter. Even people who are applying for licenses now, they ask a lot more questions. It's more stricter. They're trying to put measures in place. So it happens that the doors are open and then people take advantage of it. And then things change. So, like here in England, before, long ago, they used to have matroli. When you go shopping, even in some areas, you'll find in some areas, you can get a trolley without £1. But some areas, you have to put in £1 as deposit for your trolley. But it hasn't always been like that. You could just go into the supermarket, you get a trolley, wait a shopping yako odzoka. You don't have to put £1. And in some areas, it's still the same. Even in Coventry, we have different areas where some areas you don't put £1, other areas you put £1. And why is that? It's because people will take the trolleys and then not bring them back where they're supposed to put them in, or people will take the trolley home and then it's found somewhere far away, or trolley is damaged. So what did the supermarkets do? The supermarkets then introduced a method of control where you have to put a deposit so that you bring the trolley back. So they put systems in place. So it's the same with this COS issue that the country needed labor, needed people to work, isn't it? So they opened up to say, come, we need people. But they've realized that, there's a lot of abuse. There are a lot of people taking advantage of this system. So already they're talking and planning and thinking and reviewing and looking at the numbers, looking at the system, looking at the abuse, looking at all the reports that are made from all of the people who are reporting, whistleblowing. And they are already thinking of what are we going to do to tighten. So they're already introducing the pounds on the trolley. And then they will enforce it. So it always is what happens. So no one gets away with it. People can get away with things for a season or for a time. But panongozo, we are measures which put things in place to hold structure. So it's abuse of a system, and there's always repercussions. Things get tightened, things change, they come in hard. Even now I'm telling you about people who are getting refused switches because they worked too many hours. Employers are getting their licenses revoked, suspended. It's happening all the time. So just because perhaps you may not see, you think people are getting away with it, criminal charges are being brought, money laundering, human trafficking, labor abuse, modern day slavery. People are actually, the visits are going. And because, it may not come out, or we may not see it, we think that people are getting away with it, but they're not. So, yes. So, Suru guest, that's my last question I'm going to answer today. Yes. You can switch. You don't need permission to switch. You don't need permission to switch. You don't need permission from your employer. If they don't have hours, you should look for work by yourself. You don't need to ask for permission. No. You probably need a reference. But if they refuse to give you a reference, some employer, explain why they're refusing to give you a reference. some employers will ask for a pay slip to see that you've worked, so you need that as well. That's really good, Barbara. That's so good. I love the action that you're taking in the Pan-African Workers Union, where you're encouraging them to join unions and sharing information on switches. That's great. We're also doing the same. We've got a lot of people on WhatsApp groups where people are sharing information, helping each other to get switches. And that's what we can do for them, is to help them to get the switches, help them to get their to join unions and to work, so that those figures can come out. So definitely please send me a link to your groups, and I'll send you a link as well. We can do there's quite a lot of organizations who are helping individually. There's a big organization called Unseen, which is helping, and their work as well has increased. A lot of their referrals are from healthcare workers. So I think many people, when they enter the UK, they get the numbers for Unseen. They help a lot. ACAS helps people as well. So we can signpost people, we can help them, and even just to be able to listen to them, support them, encourage them, help them with skills like CV writing, interview skills, helping people to be able to get into employment, because that is what they need most, is to get to work and to get to a credible sponsor. So that is something that is important. It's something that we do. We signpost to other organizations. Coventry Refugee and Migrant Center, they have an employment team where we refer some people as well, and they can get some help. So that is important, to be able to empower people to get into employment, even going to the job center, applying on Indeed, supporting people to give them access to computers, give them access to the internet so that they can apply. And one of the things that we are starting as an organization is a project called Solace, where we are opening up a home specifically for people who are who are homeless, because there are some people who don't even have accommodation, they don't even have anywhere to sleep because of their employers who have brought them in, but they've got no hours and they're not looking after them. So we are helping people, and we need to work together as different organizations and help people. And that's where the third sector comes in, because the third sector plugs in. We get in on the front line to help people before the government changes policy. But definitely, let's work together. Thank you for what you're doing, Barbara. Guys, continue on. I know Mufaro, who was here earlier, she does a lot of work as well. And we'll share some other organizations who are helping people. So our organization is called Tulia, Tulia, which means to settle. So we support migrants to settle. So yeah, so thank you guys for joining on. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week. Our time is up. I think I've answered most of the questions. I'm scrolling through. Thank you, Lucy. Thank you for asking the questions. Lucy Kotokwa, thanks so much for asking those questions to get me to talk about that, because it's really good for you to ask for others who cannot ask for themselves. So thank you so much. Right, yeah, thank you. I'm checking for any other questions. If we've missed your question, we'll probably get back to you. We'll get back to you. Lillian, you can, I think, carry on with you can carry on with the switch. It won't affect your dependence visas, which are pending. But no, I mean, it just depends. I hope your switch goes through. If it doesn't get through, then it's a problem, isn't it? So just look at the time scales and maybe make a decision. I was just trying to answer this question here. Yeah, and just check through that and see. Oh, Princess, I'm sorry to hear about what your cousin is going through with the biometric. Probably if you can just book in a call with us and try and see, we'll see if there's anything that we can do to help him with that. Yeah, I think I've answered most of the questions. So thank you, everyone. we'll put links onto our WhatsApp group so that you can join and help each other to get switches. Thank you so much for the stars. Thank you, Spiwe. Thank you for the support. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend and see you next Friday.